Hello, 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 hello.
I waited 4 years for this. Look how beautiful it is tonight. Everybody together. This is what we need in this country.
Joe Biden came into office promising to be a centrist, to govern for all Americans, including those who supported Donald Trump.
I would take a bullet for that man.
He wanted to bring together Democrats and Republicans, govern in a centrist manner, and have bipartisan support in Congress. He wanted to heal the soul of the nation. So, how's that been going? In his first few days, Mr. Biden set about untrumping America with gusto. He signed a flurry of executive orders, undoing many of Mr. Trump's policies. A lot of Mr. Biden's early focus was on immigration. He undid the Muslim travel ban and ended construction on Mr. Trump's border wall. For environmentalists, Mr. Biden rejoined the Paris Climate Accord and the World Health Organization. Also in his first week, Mr. Biden mandated that masks be worn on federal property and on trains and planes and at airports. He also reversed Mr. Trump's ban on transgender soldiers in the military. In this fast start, Mr. Biden essentially did everything he could without needing Congress to undo Mr. Trump's policies.
My predecessor. Oh God, I miss him.
The US vaccine rollout has undoubtedly been a success.
All right, I just got my vaccine and I will recommend it to anyone and everyone.
Mr. Biden set an early target of delivering 100 million vaccine doses in his first 100 days. That always seemed low, and we've actually now passed 200 million doses. But it is one of the best programs in the world.
Come with me if you want to live.
Mr. Biden is claiming credit for the vaccine rollout, but some credit must go to Mr. Trump. It was his Operation Warp Speed which produced the vaccines.
Operation Warp Speed is the greatest medical manufacturing endeavor in American history.
And it was also Mr. Trump who had the foresight to buy up hundreds of millions of doses before other countries. Mr. Biden's own biggest achievement, from his perspective, was the $1.9 trillion COVID relief package, which delivered $1,400 stimulus checks to most Americans. It was popular with the public, receiving 70% support in polls.
His concern is for the people like me, the middle-class people who go to work every day.
Republicans said Mr. Biden's bill was too expensive and unnecessary. It had zero support from them.
For the Biden administration, it was very key to get this through and get it through fast. Biden really wanted to indicate a very clear pivot away from Trump's handling of the virus.
I'm not a doctor.
Biden promised to govern for Mr. Trump's base too, but they're unimpressed.
He's gonna ruin it.
Recent polls show that Mr. Biden has only 10% support amongst Republican voters. The general view amongst Mr. Trump supporters is that Mr. Biden wants to raise taxes and spend like a maniac.
Nobody's going to be happy.
They're also deeply unimpressed by his consideration of expanding the Supreme Court from 9 judges to 13, which would give Democrats sway there. Democrats currently have minuscule majorities in both the Senate and the House of Representatives.
All right.
Republicans, it seems, rather than cooperating with Mr. Biden, are going to hang on for elections in November 2022 and try to regain control.
Trump, 4 more years!
There's kind of the true believer Trump supporters.
I love him. Absolutely.
Those MAGA voters who I think are not winnable. I don't think that they are a faction that Joe Biden can reasonably appeal to.
What we do know is that a lot of working class interests that were sometimes leveraged and some might say even exploited by Trump, at least rhetorically.
These are animals.
Are things that the Biden administration went into their term very well aware of and very conscious of trying to address.
I will be a president for all Americans. All Americans.
So I think this will be a big question for all of Biden's term, and especially for this first year, with what kind of pivot he was able to make from the Trump presidency. Certainly in terms of policy, I think that Biden, again, has done a good job of recognizing what some of the issues were that really galvanized a lot of the support for Trump and trying to harness those within the Democratic agenda through policies and proposals that are very much geared towards the working class.
You can believe him. You can listen to him and believe it in his heart, in the words that he speaks. in how he communicates with everyone.
But also just again in his general tone that tries to have a bit more of a conciliatorily civil approach, even if Republicans and Democrats are still far apart on the issues and the budgets and the bills.
Finally, we're bringing back decency to the White House, which we have been deprived of for 4 long years.
Mr. Biden's big new project is infrastructure. He wants to spend $2 trillion rebuilding America's crumbling roads, bridges, and airports. To do this, he wants to raise taxes. He wants to put up corporation tax from 21% to 28% and raise the taxes of people earning $400,000 or more.
Do you miss me yet?
For Republicans, this is a no-go.
It's a huge tax increase.
Well, Republicans would say that the definition that Joe Biden is using of infrastructure is too capacious.
What the president proposed this week is not an infrastructure bill.
And in fact, if you look at the details of the bill, you will see that only about 5% of proposed spending is devoted toward roads and bridges. The Republicans are going to critique it largely on the grounds that much of what's in this bill is not infrastructure.
Infrastructure, according to the president, is a lot bigger.
I'm talking about making sure that you take asbestos out of schools. That's infrastructure.
But I do think that you're going to see some centrist Democrats as well, including Senator Joe Manchin, really say unless there's a good faith effort to reach across the partisan aisle, that he's not going to support it.
If I don't vote to get on, it's not going anywhere. So we're going to have some leverage here. And it's more than just me, Hoppy. There's 6 or 7 other Democrats that feel very strongly about this.
Usually infrastructure is an issue where there is bipartisan support. However, in this bill, again, very big, about $2 trillion again. So the size of it alone is going to get some pushback from many conservatives and Republicans. Secondly, again, what is in it does go bigger than what we normally think of as infrastructure.
Immigration is shaping up to be the biggest crisis of Mr. Biden's presidency. So far, it's an unmitigated disaster.
The number of Central American migrants crossing into the US has surged in recent weeks, overwhelming Border Patrol facilities and presenting the first major challenge of Joe Biden's presidency.
Last month, 20,000 unaccompanied children came across the border. The reason is simple. Mr. Trump wasn't letting them in. Mr. Biden is.
One of the big issues that Donald Trump did make in his 4 years in office was taking a hardline stance against immigration, building the wall.
What we are not doing, what the last administration did, was separate those kids, rip them from the arms of their parents at the border. We are not doing that. That is immoral, and that is not the approach of this administration.
But he has also failed to produce enough places for them to stay. So there's currently a desperate scramble on to house them at military bases and convention centers.
It's not acceptable, but I think the challenge here is that there are not that many options.
The psychological effects on the children is what we're really worried about. They're being held here way too long.
I think part of the challenge during the previous administration is that the rhetoric around immigration and migrants seeking asylum was so heavily loaded with this very divisive and dismissive rhetoric that devalued individuals as human beings.
We're taking people out of the country. You wouldn't believe how bad these people are. These aren't people.
One of the things that the Biden administration has done in trying to dial back some of that rhetoric to remind us of the fact that we are a nation of immigrants.
Biden is in some ways maintaining or doubling down on some of the policies that the Trump administration had put in that Democrats are very critical of. So immigration it's always a tough issue, and it's getting tougher, and especially since people were hoping for a sharp pivot away from Trump under Biden. Biden is maintaining some of the policies that seems like it would go over well with Trump supporters, but the fact is he has made some changes. He's allowed unaccompanied minors to come in and to seek asylum and whatnot. Immigration is just a hyper-politicized issue, and you can expect both the left and the right to pick up on different pieces of it that I think Biden's going to be kind of caught in the middle and a sense of not really pleasing anybody.
Immigrants coming to our country, with newcomers coming with their hopes and dreams and aspirations. Well, those are American traits. And when they come here with those values, they make America more American.
On the foreign policy front, Mr. Biden faces brewing crises with both Russia and China. Vladimir Putin is massing his forces on the Ukraine border, and China is eyeing Taiwan. It remains to be seen whether Mr. Biden has the nerve to deal with it.
America is back. Diplomacy is back.
100 days in, Mr. Biden's poll rating is hovering just above 50%, which is exactly where he started. Mr. Trump's poll rating at this stage was 40%. Mr. Obama's was 60%. Overall, Mr. Biden has failed to heal political divisions in America. Mr. Trump's supporters,
Biden is a fraud,
still view him as a creature of the left.
Joe Biden, you will never be my president.